Well, greetings everyone. Greetings to students, faculty, staff, community members on behalf of the School of Business, Government, and Economics. I'm Kim Sars. I'm the Associate Dean for Undergraduate Programs, and I'm standing in for Ross Stewart, our Dean, today. And each quarter, we have a Dean Speaker event. And this quarter, our speaker could not be more timely. I am so excited. I'm gushing just a little bit. I am so excited. But Julie Weiss is the director of King County Elections. It's an elected position. She's been in this role since November 2015, but her experience with as a public servant in elections goes back far beyond that. So even before Mark asked me to stand in for Ross today, I had this on my calendar. I am so excited and anxious to hear everything that Julie has to tell us today. I'm going to read just a few pieces from her bio, just in case you haven't had a chance to see that. King County elections. King County is the 13th largest county in the nation with nearly 1.4 million registered voters and one of the largest vote-by-mail jurisdictions in the world. Julie is nationally certified election administrator. She's been recognized and won a number of awards at many levels. And she's the first election administrator in the country to invite the Department of Homeland Security to audit the King County elections process. So which gives us a lot of confidence as well. Julie is driven to remove barriers by prioritizing accuracy, security, and transparency, and has pursued significant reforms and innovative solutions. So please join me in welcoming our guest speaker, Julie Weiss.
Hi all, it is so great to be with you this afternoon. I am thrilled to be here to give you a presentation overview of elections. I hope to answer all of your vote-by-mail questions, give you some real fresh new numbers that we have here at King County Elections as far as turnout for this election. I have been at King County Elections for 20 years. I had the great privilege of running both polling place and vote-by-mail elections, about 10 years with each. So I bring a unique perspective, I think, to the job. As Dr. Sars noted, I am a true election geek. I could honestly spend all day with you all talking about all things elections. I love it that much. So duly noted that my time with you is till 1:15, and then we'll open it up for some questions and answers. So enough about me. Can you believe that Election Day is just 1 week away? I am so excited for this election. We already have 800,000 ballots back at the King County election headquarters that we are already processing. I'm going to walk you through some deadlines for this election, demystify and provide some real answers around some misinformation that's circulating about vote by mail. And then talk to you about the behind the scenes. What happens to your ballot once you place it into one of those drop boxes like you have at your university's bookstore or to the USPS box? So we'll jump in and get started. And thank you again for having me here. Thrilled to be with you all. With 7 days, just a week before Election Day, we already have a 50% turnout here in King County. So we just need about 500,000 more ballots to hit our 90% challenge to voters. That's right. We think that King County voters are going to show up to this election in record numbers. That would mean 1.3 million voters out of the 1.4 are going to return their ballot for this election. They're already breaking records as soon as this election season started out. So I have all the faith that voters are going to rise to the occasion. So some key dates have already passed. Every single voter in King County should already have their ballot in hand. So you should have that in your hand and you should be looking to make a plan to how you're going to get that back to King County elections on time to be counted, because you matter, your voice matters, and we want to make sure that we hear from you in this election. So please do vote. Vote by that November 3rd deadline. That means either into the United States Postal Service by this Friday, or use one of those 73 drop boxes that we have across the county all the way up until 8 p.m. election night. We just passed a deadline yesterday of registering to vote. You could register online and by mail all the way up until yesterday, but have no fear if you or your friends have missed that deadline. There's still time. In fact, here in Washington State, we have same-day voter registration. That means that you can get registered all the way up to and including Election Day. We've got vote centers at event center locations across the region. We're going to open it up this Saturday. So more to come on that. I love nothing more than data. It probably goes without saying when you're an election administrator geek like me, but look at this data. Let's talk about our voter statistics by age group. So over 20% of our voters are between 18 and 30 years old, making up about 300,000 of the voters that we see across King County. And I just wrote down some numbers as of this morning. As of this morning, that age group, 18 to 30-year-olds, have turned out at 32%. Compare that to the 65 and over group that has turned out at 62%. And on an average, we see about 55% at this point. So we are definitely looking, working, and wanting to make sure that the voices of our future, the voices of that youngest age group there is actively voting in this election, not waiting too close to that election day deadline to make sure that their voices are heard in this election. Why vote? I think that seems like a very valid question and a very good place for us to start. Voting ensures that you have your voice heard, not just for a presidential election, but every single year here in King County, we have critical elections. In our odd years, we vote on local issues that really shape our day-to-day life, our community, our neighborhoods. Likewise, we also vote in even years for those federal and those state issues. So it's an important election every single year to make sure to turn out and have your voices heard. You know, voting is how your voice is heard. It can seem absolutely like your vote doesn't matter, but I can't tell you how many times we continue to see extremely close races with votes just 5 votes apart from candidates. So every vote is counted here in Washington State. In fact, we're going to be counting ballots all the way through November 24th. Make sure to have your voice heard. We're going to keep counting ballots. So, let's see here. Many trend again to voting in presidential elections, but I would argue that all of our elections are important, especially those local elections that shape our day-to-day lives. You know, if we don't use our voice, then we know, we just saw from the data before, who is going to have their voices heard. So make sure to turn out and let's get our friends and family engaged as well. I talked about this a little bit already. Yes, there's still time to register to vote. That's what I love about Washington State. We've been working so hard ahead of this election. You know, for a presidential, we literally work for years preparing for this event. And so we really, really want to make sure that we're removing barriers and therefore increasing access. And some of those barriers that we've removed is things like same-day voter registration, things like drop boxes or prepaid postage. It also means that we're pre-registering 16 and 17-year-olds. We really want to get people engaged in the process early and make sure that they become lifelong voters. So to be eligible to vote, you need to be a United States citizen, a Washington State resident, and not currently incarcerated or under community custody following a Washington State felony conviction. To cast a ballot, you must also be 18 years old by election day. Talked about vote centers. Vote centers are going to open up on this Saturday. They're at locations across the county. So we're up at Kenmore City Hall, Bellevue College, Federal Way Performing Arts Center, the Showware Center in Kent, our CenturyLink Field Event Center at the Seattle Seahawks Stadium, and at the University of Washington Seattle campus. At those vote centers, it is a one-stop shop. So if you didn't get registered and need to do so in person, there's the dates. Highly encourage not waiting until election day. You might encounter lines and have to wait for a little bit. But one-stop shop, you can get registered, get your ballot, a spot to vote with the voter pamphlets right there, and return your ballot at that vote center as well. We are going to be socially distanced in those locations. That's why we moved to event centers, is to make sure that we are keeping and providing a safe place for voters and for our staff. Staff are temperature checked, and everyone needs to be wearing masks. We also provide curbside service if that's something that's more convenient for our voters. Let's talk about some hot topics around vote by mail. Is it safe? Is it secure? In Washington State, we've been voting by mail for decades. While officially King County has been vote by mail for 10 years, we know that a lot of Washingtonians have voted by absentee or by mail, because it's the same thing, for many, many years. In fact, 25 years. When we moved to vote by mail in King County, 85% of our voters had already self-designated that they wanted to receive their ballot by mail. I too miss the camaraderie at those community polling places. But what we do here is we make sure instead of 8,000 poll workers, average age 76, with just about 3 hours to train them across 500 different polling locations, I've got trained Washington State certified and nationally certified election administrators that are skilled in processing ballots to handle all of our ballots. This safeguards our election. There's so much less risk associated with vote by mail elections. And we look at the actual data point. When I hear about voter fraud and vote by mail, I say that's not true. And it's not true because when you look at the data tells you in 2018, King County elections identified 17 voters out of 1.2 million as potentially voting twice in that midterm election. But that's when, and this is really important, when we compared our voter rolls in Washington to 30 other states for a 100,000th of a percent of voter fraud or errors in that election. We submitted those 17 voter registrations to our prosecuting attorney's office, and they will be following up. If you commit voter fraud, it is a hefty, steep fine. It is $10,000, 5 years incarcerated, and a Class C felony. Okay. I get so excited about this conversation again. I'm so excited to be with you all, making sure I'm hitting on my talking points here. I think so. Let's head on to, we're going to talk a little bit more about safety and security around elections again, the process. So we'll dig into this a little bit deeper here. Give myself a time check, knowing how much I'd love to talk. So how do you go about voting by mail? So all of you should have received your ballot and your voter's pamphlet if you're a registered voter. Here in Washington State, we've got 2 voters pamphlets, one from our local, from our county. It's showing in red on that picture right there, but it should actually be blue for a general election. And then the green one from the Secretary of State's office. Those combined are going to have everything that's on your ballot. We'll go over those in just a minute. You're also going to receive your ballot packet. It's got your ballot in it, it's got your return envelope, it's got a sheet that tells you about where all those drop boxes are and all the key information, and of course your security sleeve. Have no fear, there is no such thing as naked ballots in Washington State. If you've seen that ballots are discarded because they don't have that security sleeve, you're welcome to use the security sleeve if you would like to. You're also welcome to recycle it as well. Your ballot will still be counted in a secure, private manner. Voters simply are going to fill in the oval next to their choice. If they change their mind, they simply write one line across the oval and through the response. So that would be the candidate's name or approved and rejected. And then just go ahead and fill in the oval of your choice. There's 3 ways to return your ballot: a ballot drop box, through the mail, and at a vote center. Voters' pamphlets contain all of the information on the races and the candidates. Keep in mind that these are statements that the candidates wrote that they wanted the voters to read and see. We do not do any editing for grammar. If there's a comma missing or a word misspelled, we will print it exactly as the candidate provided it to us. There's also some really great information about the ballot measures. One of the things I really like in the voters pamphlet is where we get to see pro and con committees for ballot measures, see the different sides, and then they get to rebut each other's statement. So it gives you some more information around that ballot measure. I would say those voter pamphlets are one place to start. There's lots of other resources that you can look at to see more information about candidates and issues. Including on our website, we have the candidate's website and email address to get even more information. The ballot is really long. The ballot is 18 inches front and back. There's more than just the president. And I know some wonder, why in the world is there advisory votes and charter amendments and ballot measures before the president? You know, Washington state law, determined by our legislators, dictates the order in which things appear on the ballot. Really, we're governed by a lot of laws for all of the things that we do, including the ballot format and some of those different read statements. You're going to see the candidates ordered listed in the highest vote getter from the primary election. You're going to see the presidential race on the front of your ballot, bottom right-hand corner, before you flip it over for lots of important races that are going to also be on the back. I'll go back really quick and make a plug that while we do not have I voted stickers, I still would really, really love to do that. It is a couple $100,000 a year for taxpayers. So we've got this ballot stub that comes off the top of your ballot. If you're a big election geek like me, you may want to make a bracelet for yourself and wear that around as your I voted sticker. It also has the election date, so you can use it as a keepsake. Before COVID, we had many businesses that were actually giving you discounts on cupcakes, coffee, beer, and the such because you voted and they want to support you in everyone turning out and voting. If you lost your ballot, no worries. Another thing I love about Washington State, besides removing barriers, we're going to provide lots of different access for you to try to meet you where you're at. So if you don't have a ballot, lost it, it was mailed elsewhere, dog ate it, you can print one offline. You can go to a vote center. You still have time to even call us and have another one mailed out. So lots of options. We are always there for you at 206-296-VOTE. We would love to answer any of your questions and concerns and help find the best option for you if you have a situation where you need a ballot. We are also partnered with the King County Library System so that they do not charge you to print your ballot packet at those libraries as well. And I know that they're trying to open some of those locations, so maybe not as relevant with COVID right now. I love this tool. We have so many people that are utilizing our ballot tracker. So as soon as right now, you can jump online to our website. That's kingcounty.gov/elections. Right there on kind of the right top is going to be my voter information. And that MVI portal there is going to take you into a voter's pamphlet if you'd like to read it online, customized for you, and also for you to track your ballot. No better way than to put your mind at ease than hearing from King County Elections about the real issues on our website and social media, but also to track your ballot from the source. So there's just a screenshot of what that looks like when your ballot has been counted. I've checked mine out, put mine into a Dropbox out here in Enumclaw where I live, and it has already been counted. So make sure that you do that. Check it out. I think it's a pretty cool tool. We've added even more steps to track. Want to know why? Because we're tracking through the United States Postal Service more than we ever have. That means that we have this intelligent mail barcode on every single ballot as it makes its way out to the voter. Also, when it comes back to us, if voters use the United States Postal Service. So a couple extra points to track there of that estimated delivery when you get it from us. Likewise, when you get it in the hands of USPS, they'll put there on our website estimated delivery that they're going to have it in our hands, so you can continue to monitor that. I've heard some concerns over the last several months in regards to this presidential election and USPS. I want to reassure you all that I have the utmost confidence in the United States Postal Service, and here's why. We benefit from having a decade-long vote-by-mail relationship with our local USPS representatives. We have forged those relationships. We meet every single morning at 9 o'clock during the election cycle, which has been for the last several weeks and will continue for several more weeks. Outside of that, we meet weekly and monthly. From everything to designing the envelope with that official election mail indicia to make sure it can sail through to the post office and sail back to us, to also tracking data. We know that over 99% of our voters had their ballots delivered this election within just 4 days because, again, we're tracking that. That unique intelligent mail barcode also provides us the opportunity that if there is any issue with your ballot in the mail system, we're going to know when and where it is, and we're going to work with our partners to ensure that we get your ballot back in a timely manner to be counted for this election. You know me, I love my data. Did you know that the United States Postal Service delivers 433 million pieces of mail per day? I didn't know that. So our 1.4 million ballots is really a drop in the bucket. And especially when they get into the holiday season, those numbers are just bananas. So the post office has this. I have confidence in them. You should too. Feel free to use the United States Postal Service to return your ballot. In fact, over 35, maybe about 40% of our voters are already using that method to return their ballot for this election. I'm going to plug one more time though, to make sure that you've got an on-time postmark. That's critical in Washington state. Our law doesn't say that election administrators have to have it in their hand by election day, but they do have to have an election day postmark, or I legally can't count it. And thousands of ballots can't be counted each election simply because they were returned too late. So if you're going to use the post office, do me a favor, get it in by this Friday. After that, please use one of our King County drop boxes to ensure that your vote is counted. Speaking of drop boxes, those are steel tanks. They weigh in at over 1,000 pounds. They are constructed of 1/2-inch thick steel, made here locally in Puyallup by a company, get this, I love this name, Vote Armor. They are in the business of designing ballot boxes. In fact, you'll start seeing these across the country as a lot of jurisdictions do look to King County elections as a leader in vote by mail, as well as Washington state. These beasts even have fire retardant in them. They are specifically designed with only a 1/4-inch thick slot that really is only able to get a ballot packet or two in at a time so that we don't get anything else in those drop boxes. What else can I tell you about these? Oh my gosh, I love giving tours. I would love to give you all tours of our elections facility. And with COVID right now, we're not doing that. But it welcomed about 770 students a couple years back, not at the same time, elementary students, to ask some really good questions and get familiar with the elections process. Anyways, the school bus driver accidentally hit our drop box. Our drop box was completely fine. The contents in it completely fine. The bus, not so much. So I don't recommend you hitting any of those, but just goes to show you really how secure these drop boxes are. Now, these are emptied every single day. We opened them up on October 15th, and we saw record numbers using those drop boxes. They're emptied multiple times a day by 2 trained, paid King County elections employees with a set list of security protocol that they have to do. That's things like when they get to the actual drop box, there's a unique number seal on it that they've got to break. They've got to match that seal number with the last time that box was sealed up and make sure they match. Likewise, they're going to put all of those ballots into secure bins, close those up, and they're going to put a unique numbered seal on those as well that needs to match once we bring it back to the elections headquarters. I think I've covered the things on the drop boxes. And we are adding drop boxes all the time. In fact, we just added one to Seattle Central, College, Carnation, and Black Diamond Library. So always check it out. I know we've got one there at the campus's bookstore, but they are all across, and there's 560 of them across Washington state. You can use any of those. Heck, you can use any drop box in the whole entire country to return your King County ballot, and they're going to expedite sending that to us immediately so that we can count it for this election. So now that you're registered to vote, now that you know how the ballot and what all you're going to receive and the resources that you have, talked about the security of how to return your ballot. Now, what happens to your ballot once you put it into one of those blue boxes, the post office or King County elections? Well, the very first step is every single ballot that's returned is going to go through our ballot sorters. That's one going to log in that you returned your ballot, and it's going to show up in the ballot tracker so that you can put your mind at ease and know that we have it. It's also such a smart machine. It's doing a whole host of things. It's taking a camera picture of your signature on that return envelope, because we're going to use that at the next step for signature verification. It's also slicing the top of the envelope so that when we get it to opening, we can easily get the contents out. It's weighing it to make sure that we don't have extra goodies in that ballot packet. It's also detecting to see if there's any ink on that signature line, because we want to make sure to reach out to anyone who forgot to sign their ballot. Legally, we've got to have that signature. In vote by mail, that's how we ensure you and only you voted your ballot. Talk a little bit more about signature verification. But before that, we have two machines that process these 40,000 ballots at this step. That's 80,000 ballots an hour that is doing all of those various different steps. So like I said, once that ballot has been scanned, the next step is signature verification. I know what you're thinking. I never have the same signature. How could you possibly use my signature? I've got to tell you, I have been working legislatively for us to be looking in the future. I think in 10, maybe a little less, maybe a little more years, we're going to need to make sure to find another way in which to authenticate or validate a voter voted in their voter registration record. But right now in vote by mail, how we do that is through signature verification. The majority of signatures are coming from the Department of Licensing. They also come from your voter registration forms. And yes, we're a little bit of hoarders. We will keep a virtual scrapbook of all of your signatures so that we have many on file to compare to. We understand that your signature changes. We understand that some days you may be rushed and on someone's back or on your knee or on the steering wheel. What we're looking for, because we're trained by Washington State Patrol, and these are humans doing this and not just a percentage of ballots, but every ballot, we're comparing and looking for 3 similarities and characteristics in your signature. That means I don't have to sign out Julianne Wise Elsom every single time. I can just sign Julie Wise or Jay Wise if I wanted to. There's enough characters there for us to do the comparison. And again, we're here to count ballots, but we also want to make sure that we're safeguarding the election system. About 1.5 to 2% of all ballots are going to be initially challenged. The vast majority because voters either simply forgot to sign or their signature doesn't match. We're going to reach out to you. That's why we love it when you put your name, your phone number and your email right below your signature on here so that we can reach out to you. We just need to hear back from you and get that fixed by November 23rd to have your ballot counted in this election. I've had my signature challenged. I know it can feel a bit abrasive to get a letter. In fact, the letter was to me, from me, with the signature on it, so it was even more confusing. But again, that's how we safeguard our election. Please do respond to that. By the end of the election, we only see about 0.5% of voters who didn't hear that. We know this election, there will be a lot of campaigns out there, probably ballot chasing to also get those as well. After your ballot signature has been verified, we're going to keep the ones back that we need to hear back from you as a voter. The rest are going to head on to opening. This is where we're severing the identity from you, the voter, to your ballot. You deserve a secure, private, independent vote without anyone else knowing what it is. We work in teams of 2, in batches of 250, and we very quickly remove your security sleeve and ballot from that outer red envelope. Ever notice we've got these holes sticking in here? These holes do a couple of things. We're going to, 1, keep the paper copy retention for 22 months for this election. We can zip tie them together. It helps for storing those envelopes. Also, it ensures that we didn't leave anything in that envelope, like your ballot. Again, it severs the tie between you and your vote. And then we head on to processing your ballot. We're going to do review, scanning, and adjudication. What in the world are those things? Well, when a ballot is damaged, or the voter indicates their choices in a way that our tabulation system isn't going to read, meaning filling in that oval, if it can't understand it, our ballot review team works in teams of two. You'll see a common theme here, always live ballot, always teams of two, to electronically recreate the ballot in a way the machine can recognize so that those votes can be counted. Here in Washington State, we're considered a voter intent state. That means, yes, we may take a little bit longer to count your ballot, but it's because we need to do the due diligence to make sure that your voice was heard. All 39 counties across Washington State have the same 90-page manual that really helps us when voters get creative. For example, sometimes voters circle their responses. Sometimes they put a heart or a star by them. We still want to count your vote. We know you took the time to get registered, familiar with the issues, and return your ballot on time. We want to count it. So we're going to do the due diligence and look and make sure that we can understand what the voter intended. Any ballots without damage or stray marks are scanned throughout the entire voting period. That's right. As soon as we're getting ballots back, they're going through this whole entire process so that come election night, we can have some really important, meaningful election results. We don't know the results when we're scanning those. It's really just a photocopy, if you will. The machine sees an XY coordinates is filled in, but they don't know what to associate that with. That's not going to happen until 8 p.m. I'm getting ahead of myself. That's the next slide. So tabulation, scanning the ballots through, we are using machines that are built here in Alabama and that are high-speed scanners, the same one that the census uses for 90 million in 90 days. These high-speed scanners, again, are scanning in your ballot. We're going to take your ballot all the way through this process. Then what happens is at 8 o'clock election night, we are legally allowed to push the button, if you will. So all those ballots that we've been scanning for weeks and days are going to accumulate, and then we're going to take it on a secure drive. I'm going to talk about security here in just a minute, out to a computer that has internet, and we're going to post those results. And then we're going to post results at 4 p.m. every night after that. There is so much vetting and auditing that we do in elections, well before the elections and during the elections. The tabulation system is air-gapped network, meaning it's not connected to the internet in any way. People cannot hack into and change results of the election. We have a logic and accuracy test where we have the political party observers, lots of media, and the Secretary of State's office to sign off that our system is ready to go, meaning we've scanned in the ballots and we got the intended results on those test ballots that we needed to be able to move forward. But we're going to continue to audit the system. That's just one of many. We're going to do a manual hand recount of thousands of ballots to ensure, again, that the tabulation system is accurately recording your voter intent. We've done a lot in regards to cybersecurity and physical security. I was the first election administrator in the country to bring the Department of Homeland Security in to vet our elections facility. We were deemed a critical infrastructure back in, I believe it was 2017, which I think is incredibly important under the Department of Homeland Security. We have more than 50 security cameras monitoring our facility 24/7. Our facility is specifically designed for vote-by-mail elections. All 100,000 square feet have been specifically designed for that. We even had individuals that did security for casinos do the security for our elections office. I think that your ballots are worth more than gold and money, so it only makes sense. We, of course, also have web cameras in our facility. That's right, right now, or maybe after I talk, you can head onto King County Elections website and you can watch us hard at work. We want to provide transparency about the process. That's why we have a plexiglass 1/5 of a mile loop around the processes so you can watch. We can't do that right now with COVID to make sure that we're keeping our staff safe, but you can do that virtually from the comfort of your own home. We also have, of course, our badges and biometric, meaning the fingerprint that goes along with those badges. Let's talk a little bit about cybersecurity here. Security around elections isn't a check the box, right, folks? It is a 24/7, 365 vigilance to safeguard our election system, the voter registration rolls, and of course, our election results, tabulation systems, etc. We've been working really hard to ensure that we protect our election system going into this election. And you should feel confident here in Washington State. There have been attempts to hack the voter registration rolls. They have been unsuccessful. We are being vigilant in keeping our guards up. These attacks only make us even that much stronger. Now, we know that there was an attempt in 2016, and we know that we've heard from the governor and the secretary of state most recently, just in the last couple of weeks, about attempts at a state level to hack into that information. None of them have been successful, again, safeguarding our election system here in Washington State. Again, our tabulation system's on a closed network. We have to physically put a new USB drive into the tabulation server room, where I don't even have access to, put the update or the results on there, and then take that and update our results online at a different computer. We have a lot of plexiglass through the facility before COVID, and now even more so with COVID, to again provide transparency to secure areas like the tabulation server room. Results. Again, we'll have our first round of results at about 8:15 on Tuesday of next week. We hope to have really meaningful results. That means more voters' ballots counted. So that means that if you get your ballot submitted this week, your ballot is going to be reflected in those vote totals. Why is that important? Well, it's important because we see a lot of our cable media news calling elections on election night. So the more numbers we can have in there, I think it provides ease for all of our candidates, campaigns, voters, media. Also, it means that campaigns will take you off their list and stop harassing you to return your ballot. It means that you can be at ease and know that your ballot is going to be counted and your voice heard this election if you get in front of it. We anticipate about having 50 to 60% of all the ballots posted in that first election night result. But the more ballots we get earlier from voters, the higher that number will be. And then, of course, 4 p.m. each day after until November 24th, because that is when we certify the election. I want to make sure to leave time for questions. So I've got about 5 minutes here. Excuse my 19-year-old cat showed up for the party. She's 19. I just let her do whatever she wants. Let's see here. So COVID-19 precautions. You know, I really think that we are potentially the best positioned jurisdiction in the country to run an election during a pandemic. But we too have had to make a lot of changes. Thankfully, we've seen some money at the national, local level and grants to be able to help support that. We've implemented temperature checking for our staff. Of course, again, a lot of plexiglass through the facility, socially distanced, wearing masks, wearing gloves, making sure that we have one-way hallways, lockers for our staff to be able to use, hand sanitizer stations, and making sure to take breaks to wash hands. So we are doing everything again to protect our staff and protect our voters amid this pandemic. So what can you do? Remember that if you lost your ballot, you can always print another one right off of our website. It's a little bit of an arts and craft project. It's helpful if you have an envelope, but that's a great spot to just easily jump online and get your ballot printed just like the one that we mailed to you. Keep voting early. Please, 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 if anything, if you could, follow us on social media. We're at KC Elections for Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. If you can encourage 5 friends to vote and to vote early and to make that vote plan right now, where are they going to return it? When? Again, just to make sure that we all have our voices heard in this election. We matter and we need to have our voices heard. So let's show the country how King County turns out, how Washington State turns out, and happy voting. Thank you for having me here. I'm sorry, I know I talk fast. I am truly this energetic and excited about all things elections, even just a week before. I'm happy to answer any of your questions. There's also some contact information. I'm gonna stop sharing and move this out of the way.
Thank you so much. Now we're going to move into questions and answers, and I can see that already there's a number of questions in the Q&A box. So Mark is going to moderate this discussion, so I'm going to pop back off and let him ask all those great questions.
Great, thanks, Kim. Yeah, go ahead and upvote questions you like. We will try to get to as many of them as possible. I see there's already a number in the Q&A box here. Julie, our first question comes from Aurelio, who says, I'm organizing an informational voting night for my communities of Snohomish County, specifically South Everett. With my community historically lacking digital equity, what are steps King County has taken to make voting more engaging, especially in the time of COVID-19?
Well, I think one of the one things is vote by mail, right? I know it seems like an obvious here, but we don't see this across the country. Just the act of providing every single individual, all 1.4 million or over 4 million in Washington state, with their ballot wherever they want in the entire country. That's right, we'll mail ballots wherever. I think that is one of the most key important places to start. I think in this country, a voter should be able to get their ballot without excuse, without having to submit a plane ticket or a doctor's note, to be able to have their absentee or mail ballot in. So I think that I think we're ahead of the game there. King County has worked a lot about digital equity, and we still have a lot more work to do. COVID has, I think, really highlighted that. And I'm hopeful, and I will be at the table as an elected leader for King County, working on how we continue to make sure we have access in communities. One of the things I'm most proud of that I've done in my 20 years at King County Elections is a program called the Voter Education Fund. It is the first in its country of a government, philanthropic, community-based organization partnership where we're putting $500,000 to community-based organizations to help us get people registered to vote and engaged and meet those communities where they're at, help us recognize as election administrators what those barriers are. So think about things like Washington Bus or Real Change or REWA or Seattle King County Coalition on Homelessness. These are the 30-some plus organizations that we're providing that technical support to, as well as the dollar amount to help support those get out the vote efforts.
Thank you very much. I've got two questions that are somewhat related. I'm going to take them from Stephen and Richard. Stephen you mentioned the idea of better voter authentication method than signatures in the next 10 or so years. What are some of the most likely alternatives? But I also, before we get to that one, I wanted to ask Richard's question, which is, with the variation around signatures, are there ways people can change their signature? I actually know the answer to this because I've had my signature challenged, but I'd love to have you answer that one first. And then what other voter authentication methods might we see in the next 10 or so years?
Absolutely, a voter can update their signature. You know, at this point, we're so close to the election and we're getting still a lot of paper voter registration forms in, but that's typically what we're going to use. So if you haven't been challenged and you're not receiving a love letter from the office, then what you would do right now is a voter registration form. If you're interested in wondering, when did King County Elections last update a signature for me and where did they get it from? You're always welcome to contact our office and we can tell you what that signature looks like. So we are seeing some different things across the world around ways to authenticate voters. Hawaii, let's take that for example. They did vote by phone. In order to do vote by phone, they provided PIN verification numbers, 2 sets of numbers to their voters to be able to vote by phone. So we could look at some sort of PIN or verification number or ID in which the voter would need to enter or provide or supply. Of course, we'd have to figure out a secure way in which for them to get it. We also see places like Estonia that is voting online. And so their authentication is through the actual ID that's provided, the government national ID that's provided that they're using to be able to access their system. So we see a couple variations out there. I think what we really need to do is we need to get some experts around the table. We also need to get some voters, all of us around the table to really talk about what could we use to authenticate voters. I think the place to start is with our military voters. They have some military IDs. I think it's a good place to start. But we need to be looking, especially for our voters with disabilities, our aging population, as those signatures decline and change over time. So signature verification is a subjective process. And so we really want to make sure that we're looking into the future of election administration. So if you get challenged by us with a signature, when you fill out that form, that also updates your signature as well. Is that the same answer you would have given?
Yeah, no, I had to send back the new signature card and the whole thing when I got challenged a couple, and I did it before the next election to make sure. They said, we counted your vote this time, but you need to do this before the next election. There's two more questions related to technology, and since we're on this topic, I thought we'd just go with them. One says, when do you think we'll have the opportunity to vote by phone? And the other one is about, what does the future of voting look like with the advancement of faster technology? You've mentioned a couple of possible options. Anything else you'd add to that list? And do you think vote by phone is realistic?
Yeah, I would say that King County Elections is using state-of-the-art technology. You know, when I showed you those sorter machines, those aren't designed for elections. Those are designed for huge mail houses. So what we're doing in King County is the 12th largest county in the country. For many, many years, we were the largest vote-by-mail county in the entire country, but then California followed suit, and so LA County and Orange County blow us away there. But the tabulation system that I shared with you, that is from Clear Ballot, based out of Boston, state-of-the-art election equipment technology right there. I could dig in for 5 hours on just the huge leaps and bounds that system takes election administration technology to a whole different game. What was the other piece of that technology question that I love? Oh, voting by phone. Yes. Has anyone heard about the King Conservation District? Do a little Googling. Earlier this year, I can't believe it still was in 2020, earlier this year, the King Conservation District, which just happens to be such a special, unique jurisdiction that I don't get to legally run those elections like I get to the other 191 jurisdictions in King County. We worked with them. They did an actual mobile voting, online voting for the supervisors for that conservation district. Wow, national news just beat that poor conservation district up, saying it was not secure, it's not safe. So while I think that we're going to have the technology, maybe not right now completely figured out, I think we're going to have the technology before we're going to be able to actually go that direction, simply because of perception. There are a lot of people that are excited and interested in that convenience, and there are a lot of people that are very concerned about our ability to safeguard true online voting. So I'm going to keep my pulse on it. I'm going to keep encouraging jurisdictions that don't have to follow the host of laws that we do in Washington State. I can't legally do online mobile voting now, and I don't think it's a good idea right now. I think we need more testing, security around it, and we need to do a big communication. Just like when we moved to vote by mail, it's about communicating with voters so that they understand the safeguards to it. So not there, but it's coming. It's definitely coming.
I've got a quick one for you. What are the 2 languages you've successfully added on the voting materials?
We have 5 languages: Vietnamese, Chinese, Korean, Spanish, and of course, English. Voters can register with those languages, and then they receive all of their communication: voter pamphlet, ballot, phone call, email, letter from us in that preferred language.
Great. And here's one that's, and I hope I understand this question, but I'll ask it to you because it's getting upvoted. With the continuing outsourcing of labor from the government, what is King County doing to debureaucratize and promote democracy?
Wow, that is quite the question. I'm not sure that I've ever been asked that question, and I'm not sure if I'll answer it accurately for what you're looking for. Outsourcing of labor. So what I can say for King County Elections is that we have 70 full-time permanent employees at the elections facility. Many of those are union jobs. I'm very fortunate to have IT experts, cybersecurity experts, a ballot processing expert on hand. All of the employees that we hire at King County Elections are union paid employees that are trained, benefited, staffed here at King County Elections office. So outsourcing of labor, I'm not so sure in what regard. So I'm not sure if that answered your question. I probably would need a little bit more information.
So I will say this, Tris, who asked that question, if we didn't answer the question, go ahead and put an update, and then we'll upvote that hopefully and put it in there if we can. I just want to add, there was a comment in here, it wasn't a question, but somebody said their grandmother, who was from Virginia, was fascinated by the ballot drop boxes. She made us pull over to the side of the road so they could take a picture. So
I don't know, can we call them belfies, ballot selfies, belfies? I don't know, but it's not illegal in Washington state. It's actually illegal in some states to take a ballot selfie, but it is the best I voted sticker on social media. I love seeing those all over the place. That's hilarious about your grandma too. I like that.
Zane asked what may be the most popular question we've had so far. Do you have a rough estimate of how many ballots are not able to be counted because they came in too late?
Oh my gosh, I should absolutely have that number on the top of my head. I'm talking at least for the size of an election like this, you're talking 10, 15,000 voters. So if it's got a postmark of November 4th or after, we are not legally allowed to count it. We do get postmarks on those. We also have an orange barcode we can scan. If the postmark isn't visible to the voter, we can still get that data there.
What does King County Elections do when there's not an election?
That's a fabulous question. I know it's probably shocking, but we really truly are busy all year long. We actually are running 4 elections each year minimum. We've got 2 in the sort of springtime, and then our summer primary and our fall general election. So we have those 4 elections a year that keep us very busy. In the meantime, we really push ourselves to be better than we were the election before. We want to leave this system better than we found it. We want it to be the most inclusive election system in the country, if not the world. So in the off times between those 4 elections, we're hard at work preparing and planning for the next election ahead. We also have really a lot of other things we do, like candidate filing. 700 some candidates file in King County elections during those odd years. I'd put a plug. We need more young folks, people of color, and women running for office. We know part of the reason why people don't vote is because there's no one on the ballot that looks like them or represents them. So we're doing a lot of work trying to encourage people to run for office. We need younger people to run for office. So we do a lot of campaigning around that and training and education around that, because candidate filing is in the spring of every single year. Next year is a great year to get started. Think about school board or fire commissioner or city or legislator, and then even precinct committee officers in those even years. So we do a lot of work outside those 4 elections. I hope that didn't come off defensive. We're really busy.
No.
Okay.
No, I think it's fascinating what goes behind the scenes to get all this up for the big event. Somebody asked here, I'm voting out of state. They're a student here, but they vote in another state. Does the USPS here in Seattle expedite their envelope to their state?
Absolutely. Official election mail. Make sure, I'm sure that your state has this indicia here. They're expediting vote by mail. They want to make sure they know this is good customer service. They know that vote by mail is a good money maker for the United States Postal Service. They want to do it right. So yes, as long as you see that election indicia, I'd be surprised if any jurisdiction didn't have that. It's going to be expedited through the United States Postal System. Or you can use a Dropbox too. We will be happy to package up ballots and send them across the country like we do every single election across the state as well.
If I'm from Oregon or California and I drop my ballot for that state in a King County Dropbox, you'll send it to my state.
That's correct. We're going to stamp it that it's on time with the date that it was received in our King County elections hands, so they know that it was received on time. And we're going to, usually it's FedEx or UPS it, because there's multiple ballots that we're sending off to other jurisdictions. I know it might seem bananas, but it happens all the time.
Kathleen asks, will there ever be a day where the local and county voters pamphlets and state voter pamphlets are combined? It's one thing to have to stop and read about a particular item in the pamphlet and then find out you're in the wrong one. It makes it more cumbersome for voters. Thank you and keep up the great work.
Yes, yes, yes. I hear you 100%. We are working on it. With the translation of the different languages, our deadlines haven't matched up very well with the Secretary of State's office, but it is my mission to not only combine those 2 voters pamphlets so you only get one, but also that we take a look at that voters pamphlet, see if there should be some questions that we should be asking candidates. Maybe we should be asking judges a certain question so that we can give a little bit of facelift to that voters pamphlet and make sure that it's relevant and providing you with the information that you want and need in regards to those. So you have my commitment on getting those two merged. I totally agree.
I have two similar questions, so I'm going to ask them together. They're not the highest on the list, but they're similar. So one person asked, does the presidential election also get called in terms of our votes for it on November 24th? And somebody else asked, in your personal opinion, at what point do you think that the presidential election will be called? So I think there's some interest in how long will that take to have an answer on this year?
Very valid question. The highest amount of ballots we've ever been able to report on an election night was 615,000, and I think we're going to crush that. Not quite ready to give a number of what that's going to look like on election night. Again, it depends on voters. If they vote early, typically we don't get 50% of the ballots until after election day because they're returned at drop boxes at night, at election night, or at the United States Postal Service. So we don't even have 50% in our hands. So I think you're going to see record-breaking results on election night. I think we're going to be pretty wrapped up in King County with a major hump of our ballots by Friday. That's right, next Friday. I think you should really know close races here in King County. Some of the smaller counties, it might take a little bit more time in Washington State. Go to the Washington Secretary of State's website to see all of those counties' results feeding in together. Feel free to go to King County Elections to monitor that as well. But I think you're going to see record numbers. And again, we should really be wrapped up by that Friday. Again, we're going to keep counting, but at that point, it'll be really low quantities.
We're getting short on time here, but I do want to ask this question because it has some interest. Was there a large number of new voters this year as compared to other presidential election years?
Yeah, absolutely. We typically see 100,000 more voters every single presidential election. And this election, again, is breaking records. We're already at 125,000 new registrations just from the start of this year. And we're not done yet, right? People are still going to be registering all the way up to election day. So we've already crushed the number of typically around 90 to 100,000, and we're going to continue to keep adding to that.
Do you have time for one or two more questions here?
Oh, absolutely.
One student asked, she's from Clark County in Southwest Washington, curious why she didn't receive either voter's pamphlet.
Okay, in Clark County, you did not receive okay, well, you definitely should have received a green one from the Secretary of State's office. Sometimes counties don't provide local voters pamphlet, but the law has changed there. So King County used to be just one of 7 counties that provided that local printed voters pamphlet, one to every residential address in the county. Now all 39 counties, after a bill that passed legislation last session, every county needs to produce a local voters pamphlet. So it might be that Clark doesn't have a local one. I'm assuming they weren't merged together. I will call Auditor Greg Kimsey myself and ask him what in the world he is doing. But I do not know off the top of my head about Clark County, either merged or they didn't do one altogether. But they will start next year.
A little out of your jurisdiction there. Emily asked about the candidates and their information in the voters pamphlet. She mentioned that Lauren Culp didn't have any information provided for the governor's statement. Did he miss a deadline, or why would there be a reason for not having that information in there?
That's correct. He missed a deadline. As you can imagine, we are ruled by deadlines. And so when you run for office, like I have, it's intimidating. There's lots of deadlines. There's lots of things going on there. And it's really early on in the election cycle, I should note. This is back in May, you guys, of when candidates filed and had to provide their voters pamphlet statement. Mr. Culp did not submit completed voters pamphlet statement to the Secretary of State's office. So any of those state offices, they filed their voter pamphlet information with the Secretary of State's office. He didn't meet those deadlines. There's not an opportunity at the state level to update your voter pamphlet between the primary and general election. Throw a wrinkle in this, now in King County, we do allow for that. So we have candidates that can provide an updated statement between that August and November election. The Secretary of State's office does not have those rules. So you missed a deadline to submit a photo, your occupation, your statement, you are done. There's no opportunity to submit at a later date.
All right, and our last question comes from Emir, who asks, is there a central database for federal government to know how many people voted for a certain candidate?
No. No, there is not. I would love, my first 20 years to do local elections, I would love to do some more federal election reform over sort of rules of engagement around elections. But no, there's not. There's that electronic registration information center where we're comparing voter rolls to make sure people aren't registered multiple times. But there's not one that's actually keeping the result or how people voted. And of course, as you already know, I don't think that was the intent of your question, we would never know how you voted. But to say this many voters voted for this candidate in Washington State versus Oregon, whatever, I'm not familiar with a database like that. There's so many geniuses out there, probably a blog somewhere, but I'm not familiar with one, an official site.
Well, thank you so much. I think we got through 17 or 18 questions. You do talk fast, but that's great because we got a lot of people, their questions answered. I'll turn it over to Dr. Soares for any last thoughts.
Oh my, thank you so much for the informative and energetic and presentation. I, for one, can absolutely see your passion for the work, and it gives us great confidence. I can see why you have been given recognition and awards for removing barriers and increasing access. So thank you for your work, and thank you for the participants for all your great answers. I'm really pleased to see all the great questions coming through. And so thank you, Mark and Kate, for organizing this for us. And thank you again, Julie. Great, great presentation. And thank you so much for spending your time with us today.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Kate. Thanks, Dr. Soares. I really appreciate this opportunity. Happy voting all, and have a great rest of your Tuesday.